there's sometimes where you just want to sit for a couple of minutes after. Quiet. Don't do the sermon though. I'm going to tell 2 stories to start. And then the sermon today, when you prepare sermons, sometimes you prepare sermons in a very generic way, and you hope that everybody gets at least a little something from the sermon. Sometimes you're very specific and addressing one specific issue, and hoping that people who are dealing with that particular issue, whether it's spiritual, social, or whatever, take it on board and work with it. So they're different targets. This morning, my hope for the sermon this morning is that all of you hear it and understand what I'm getting at. I hope I'm clear enough that you do. But it's not going to apply directly to all of you. But there are some of you who it will apply very specifically to. Isn't that like sort of confusing? Like, I hope that makes you want, what's he going to say now? So it's not for all of you, but all of you, I hope you understand it. 2 stories to start. A lot of years ago now, like I've been here, more than 25 years. A lot of years ago now, we had done a lot of work to move St. Mary's from where it was to where we believed we wanted it to be. When I arrived here, the selection committee, God bless them, they were courageous. They were honest, and selection committees aren't always honest and courageous, but the one here was. And they knew that there had to be some tough stuff done. And while it was the job of the new rector to do the tough stuff, they promised support. And unlike many selection committees, the support wasn't just in word, it was in deed. They did support, they did back what I was doing. There needed to be a shift in the power base in the parish. There needed to be all sorts of things. And so we embarked on a journey, I think is probably a sermonish way of saying it. And that included changing the liturgy, it included bringing in youth, it included new music, it included a lot of stuff. And while to most of us these days, we're like, yeah, like the liturgy had to change. We're stuck in the Victorian era or before. Yeah, music had to change. Most of the hymns in the Blue Book around the 19th century. Yeah, there's a lot of kids on the West Island. How come none of them were coming to St. Mary's? Yeah, that has to change. So some of it's a no-brainer now, but it sure wasn't then. Because when you try to change things, obviously things are the way they are for a reason. And within institutions, very often that reason is power and control. And so when you try to introduce something, what you're doing is making a control shift. And before you do that, you've got to be willing to pay the price. And sometimes the price is bruises that you can see, sometimes it's bruises that you can't see. One of my clergy colleagues actually got bruises ones that he could see. The bruises that I've got mostly in the church are the ones that you can't see, but we all get them. But we began to change, and we began to grow, and we had a strong youth ministry. That was the strongest parish youth ministry in the diocese. And music began to change. And, part of that was the music director that we had, who was an absolutely lovely man, but very traditional in orientation. He and I have always got along very well, but very clear that we had different, ideas of what church music should be. And at one point, he agreed. He saw things and agreed, from my perspective, what had to happen musically. But he said, "Lord, that's just not me." And God, I admire for that. That instead of, kicking up a fuss and undermining and, going, just being nasty, Jim, God bless him, it's, Lord, it's just not me. And so he resigned. And he did not do any damage. And in fact, he and I played golf a couple of times after his resignation, so I don't know whether we did that just to prove to each other that we still liked each other. There were no ill will, but we did. Nice guy. Then we hired, God, what was I thinking? Hired somebody who was 16 at the time. I thought you were 16 at the time.
No,
anyway, 90. Because it's 20 years she's been music director, and she's 38, nearly 39. And she can hardly play, I began to notice because we had jump pianos in the church at the time, and she would, first pick up the alto like one finger at a time. She was not a musician, though there was a lot of aptitude. She could sing, that's for sure. It took a risk, and it was my risk to take. I asked advice. The advice didn't have a whole lot to do with music. It had to do with, the mess you can get into bringing in a teenager who doesn't know how to play into a church who's used to really high caliber music. Anyway, what ended up happening is what usually happens when Marie takes something on. She got really good really quick, you know, and music began to go, oh yeah, with people. We began to get it. And at the same time, as I say, numbers were growing, youth group was happening, there were all sorts of good things. So I got to a point where we had gone as far as I had ever gone in ministry of the parish. And I didn't know, well, what should we do next? We've got study groups, we've got prayer groups, we've got music, everything seems to be coming together. What happens now? In the last parish, it was time to build a building because we were too big for the building. Well, that's never been the case here. So what do you do? So I went to one of my friends, a great priest, a really great priest, who had had tremendous success in his parish in Westmount. And at a clergy retreat, I said, Robin, here's what's happening at St. Mary's, and he'd heard some of the stories, so he knew what was going on. He also knew me rather well. And I said, so Robin, you know, once you got this, what do you do next? You know, where do you go? And he says, Lorne, I've been trying to figure that out. When you figure it out, let me know. He was my best shot. And he didn't have any advice as to what to do next. You know? That's the first story. Now I can tell you that story. Very, very different story. This is when I was in Montreal, north of Mascouche. And again, there's always lovely people in every parish. And there are some that they're just so precious and so precious. And this story pretty much got one of those. And Mascouche, unlike us, we've been broken into a couple of times here. In Mascouche, it tended to be more vandalism than looking for cheap computers. We got broken into a bunch of times. There was no security, the church wasn't in the center of town or anything like that. Got broken into a bunch of times. Anyway, one time when we got broken into, whoever it was that broke in decided that we were going to make a mess of the place, and went into my office. And in my office, on my desk, of course, are a bunch of papers and a vestry book. You know, that's where we keep the record services, and my robes. You know, my album, my stoles. My sister had given me for my ordination a set of stoles. You know, the colored scarf I wear going on when it's communion time. And they were in my office. And another thing was in my office. Those of you who knew me when I could walk will say, oh yeah, that's Lorne. 20 liters of floor wax. Okay? Because guess who does the floors? It was me. So where we keep the floor wax in the rector's office, right? We didn't have a janitor's room at St. Margaret's. So it was my office with all my stuff in it and 20 liters of floor wax. Well, when they broke in, they decided that it would be fun to spread the wax all over. So they covered my desk with the wax, and they took all my robes and put them on the floor, and covered them with wax and stomped on them and stuff like that. And so we found that mess the next time we came into the church. I got to tell you, it was heartbreaking. My owl was just an ordinary owl, but the stoles especially. Well, only one actually was really damaged. The red stole, it was just covered in wax, and it sort of dried to that sort of gluey gummy stage. It was finished. So I thought. And everybody really, was upset. They knew that was present. And there it was. And why did people do this? Why did they just come in and trash stuff for the sake of trashing it? So we were a little discouraged. You're trying hard, and every setback when you're trying hard, it sort of gets you to the gut. And that one sure did. The robe was a write-off, threw it out. And some of the papers were write-off. The vestry book was a write-off, threw that out. Such a shame because all the pages were glued together. That was a record going back about 30 years of church services. So it was sad. Well, one of the altar members is the precious person I'm talking about. Knowing the story that the robes were a gift, not the robes, the souls were a gift, she decided that she was going to try and use it. But she figured wax, So she took my stole home. She didn't tell me. Took my stole home, put it through the washing machine. Well, folks, we're talking industrial wax. We're not talking about, lemon pledge. We're talking about industrial wax. We're talking about the stuff they put on the floor in Lawless. It's meant not to come off. And so she tried with hot water, she tried with cold water, she tried with every soap that she could. Apparently didn't get anywhere with it. And so then she decided, that she was going for the big guns. So what she did was she went to church, and when you do the floors here, you got to take off the old stuff first. You use stripper, and so as well in church was 20 to use a stripper, and so she brought some of the stripper home, and she poured stripper into her washing machine with my stole, hoping that would be solved with the wax and all the rest of it. Well, I got to tell you, as I said, precious woman. But what came out of that washing machine wasn't much like a stove. You know, it was pretty awful. And she felt so bad. Like, she really wanted to fix my stove for me because it was part of the set. It was a gift. And so, she came to church the following Sunday, and I knew nothing about this. And, in a way, it's a bit odd, but it will show you some of where her heart is. Even though the stove was a wreck, you know, like, just imagine, okay? Well, actually, you probably can't, but it was a wreck. She had dried it and then ironed it, folded it nicely and ironed it. And you know how when you get stuff back in the cleaner, sometimes it's wrapped in tissue paper. And she wrapped it nicely in tissue paper. And she didn't know how to tell me. You know, so she comes up to me and she says how she knew it was a present, and she knew that it still belonged to me. And she had really wanted to fix it for me. She couldn't. And she was so brokenhearted, like there were tears in her eyes as she was telling me this. Not that any of it was her responsibility, of course, but like she wanted so much to fix this for me. And she just couldn't, no matter how she tried, no matter what she did, she just couldn't fix it for me. Like she didn't know how. Either that or maybe there just was no way to fix it. And it broke her heart. Well, why these two stories? I think we in the church sometimes need to be a little bit more broken-hearted than we are. You know, there's a lot of things in the world that are broken and damaged. There's a lot of hurting people. There's a lot of hurting people. And I think we need to feel it like that more than we do. That's one thing. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And the other thing is, my friend Robin, who's one of the best priests I've ever known, just wonderful priest and wonderful human being. He didn't know what came next. But where I came to after that conversation, took me a while, was we didn't know that if we faithfully keep trying, God's going to make it clear. God's going to make it clear. And you know what? The future of the church, the future of this church, will have to do with the point of those two stories. What is unknown to us is known to God. Okay? What is unknown to us is known to God. And what's broken, sometimes despite our best efforts, the most sincere heart, the most broken heart, sometimes we just can't fix it. But God can. Okay, so that's the point of the two stories. What's unknown to us is known to God. And sometimes what's broken takes more than us to fix. Well, why do I say that? And here's where I get into the point that I really hope you all take away. You know, we look at the church, and we look at declining numbers. This is Vester meeting Sunday, so it's part of why I'm saying this. We look at the church, we look at declining numbers, we look at, leaky roofs and busted windows, and I just was in the hall before the service, and there's another new leak. I look at all those kites that we have on the ceiling representing kids that we baptize, and we just don't baptize that many kids anymore, and people don't seem to be coming to church for weddings anymore, and funerals used to be only ministers to funerals. Well, now even the ads on radio will say, about the variety of ways you can do a funeral. It's basically in memory of the person who has passed away. That's not wrong, but there's really been a separation. Even in some things that are traditionally religious, and it's like the church is sort of going, what's our job? What's our job? It's not like it used to be. We're not here for the things we used to be. Like everybody used to bring their kids for baptism. And then for confirmation, because the church stood for right things and good. And, if you're a good person, well, the foundation of that is a clear sense of morals and ethics. And it's just not the way it used to be. It's just not the way it used to be. And at the same time as saying that, we're also looking around at the world around us and boy, seeing a lot of brokenness, a lot of hurt. Depression is endemic, and relationships seem to be matters of convenience as opposed to matters of commitment. And so many people get caught in the crossfire, and so many people get hurt. And having gone through myself and being through the ending of relationships with so many people over the years, nobody begins something good anticipating that it's going to end bad or pain. And then there's all the other things, the things that give us anxiety, our health, our finances, the kids, and then there's the things that we grieve when you retire and you've identified yourself. I'm going to leave out the next sentence because I think it's wrong. When you've identified yourself, what I was going to say was this, I think applies mostly to men, but I don't think that's true anymore. That was on purpose, I live that way. You identified so strongly with your career, for your sense of self-identity and who you are and self-worth, but you retire and all of a sudden you go, who am I? What am I? What am I for? Do I have any purpose at all? And you grieve. You grieve the life that you have had that is now, it's now ending in some measure. And then, of course, when we deal with the reality of death, how do we grieve? How do you grieve in a society where there's so little faith? How do you grieve loss, whatever that loss is, if you don't have faith? What do you do? How do you stop yourself from sliding into just despair? Because with faith, wherever your faith is, whatever your faith is, there's hope. And if there's no faith, there's no hope. What are you left with? But endings of despair and futility. And that's the world we're living in. So the church is going to nowhere. Well, if you know what the next thing is for the church, then we know. What are we for? How are we supposed to? And we're in a society that in some ways, can I use a police cheap shorthand and say, it's falling apart. People are falling apart. And I haven't even spoken at all about some of the mega things like ISIS and where that comes from and why young people in our country are attracted to that. We've got that new phrase, a new word that probably none of us had heard this time last year. Young people are being radicalized. Is that even a word? But we've invented it to describe something that's going on. Why is that happening? And what I'd like to say is it's because we've lost things that are at the core of who we are to be as humans. And as a result, well, we're looking for stuff in all the wrong places. Okay? So what's the church's response? I was watching a video yesterday. It was about the environment, and it was absolutely brilliant. I'm going to recommend it to you in News Bites and give you the URL for it and all the rest of that sort of stuff. I think I used the term URL correctly there. At the end of it, after showing what we're doing to the planet in so many ways, the person who's narrating goes on to speak of that she can't be pessimistic. Pessimism is not an option. Pessimism is not an option. And very, very short snippets, I'll say 10 to 30 seconds each, you see all sorts of things happening on the planet where answers are being provided. This is only environmental stuff. I think it's an environmental video. Wind farm in Norway. A bank in some small African country that only lends to poor people. A town in Senegal that started a particular industry. And it just goes all sorts of, and even in North America, some corporation that has switched from fossil fuel to solar to heat its building. And it's just this list. You can't be pessimistic anymore. And I was thinking, wow. I was thinking, that's a message the church would hear. We can't afford to be pessimistic anymore. We can't afford to say, the old ways aren't working, nothing seems to be working. We can't afford that. But then I was thinking, no. Because pessimism isn't a word that you should hear in a Christian church. Because pessimism is basically everything is down and there is no hope. And that's Christianity is the antithesis of that. Christianity says where things are most hopeless, where things are most desperate, that's where you're going to seek grace. And I don't want to extend this by half an hour by referring to the gospel reading, but I will refer to the gospel reading very shortly. Man, blind from birth. And in his interaction with the religious leaders, they say, you were born in sin. Because that was the link, that if you were born like blind or something like that, it was because somebody sinned. There's no hope for you. You're hopeless. But look at what happened. He comes across that annoying Nazarene. And this guy, blind from birth, all of a sudden sees. And what I'd like to suggest is, that's what God wants for the church. In every area where we're blind, in areas where we're tempted to despair, in areas where we're tempted to hopelessness, depression, darkness, all those things, that when you look at the way things are, what's next? Well, humanly speaking, the trajectory is going one way. I would say, because of grace, we can have hope. And now I want to sort of flesh that out a little bit, just like the video did, that I referred to a moment ago. I've told you about this before, but it's worth hearing again and again and again. Certainly for me, sometimes I need to hear things more than once, more than 10 times, before I actually internalize it, before I get it. Last year there was that social service trade show at the Dollar and Civic Center. Did you hear me speak up? Where Meals on Wheels, West Island Civic Cincinnati, Nova, all the social service organizations put on a trade show and invited healthcare professionals and educators and people like that to come and see what was available, what are the resources available on the West Island, And as a occupational therapist, Bethany was invited, and she asked me if I'd be interested in going, And I was interested in going, so I went to Tardy Civic Center, and this room is filled with all these, it was really quite impressive what's available. And I would go around, and I wore my collar, perhaps I should have one that's neon, sort of glows, so it's more noticeable. But I wore my collar. I don't usually do when I go out. I wore my collar, and the reception I got was brilliant. For an event when I was leaving, and I was on my scooter driving around the hall, and if I had a micrometer, it probably would have been dead center of the hall. It's a bit of an exaggeration, but not much. The lady, I think she was the head of Meals on Wheels for the West Island, came running up to me and saying, Father, before you leave, give me your blessing. And there we are in the middle of this room with all these social service people. I'm there giving a blessing who I've never met in my life. She's never been. Wow. I couldn't plan that post. I couldn't plan that. But doesn't it say something to you? The event, the reception, the surprise that I went. And so doesn't that say something to you about the world we're living in? And how ready and willing to receive people are. When I was in seminary doing counseling, I shouldn't say, this is going to be a generalization, okay? And generalizations are, not universally true, but they have a validity. I was taught that in the perfect psychology, psychiatry, that faith is an unmet, faith is a manifestation, an erotic, sorry, gotta start it over. that faith is a neurotic manifestation of unmet needs. Okay? Faith is a neurotic manifestation of unmet needs. That's what I was taught. Okay? I think it was the May 2010 issue of the Canadian Journal of Psychiatry, whatever it's called. It was all about spirituality. And in effect, what it was saying was any therapist that doesn't take seriously the spiritual needs of their clients is guilty of malpractice. Now, that doesn't put an agenda on it. It just says spirituality is part of the core of what it means to be human, and we've got to take it seriously. Do you not see an incredible opportunity for the church there? Let me develop it one further. The St. Louis, La St. Louis CLSC, I've been there a couple of times now to a wellness group. It's about mental health, lovely people. As a speaker, a minister speaking to a secular wellness group. Do you get the sense that maybe the lines are becoming blurred? That the secular isn't quite as secular, and maybe the sacred needs to get off its high horse and out of its doors just a little bit, maybe just a little less, a little less something. I think the lines are becoming blurred. Maybe there's an opportunity there. What does that remind me of? I think the blurriest spiritual lines I ever can come across are when you look at how Jesus spent his life. Man, did he blur lines. Talking to women in public. Gasp and take a breath. Talking to an adulteress and saying, I'm not accusing you, but hey, don't do it anymore. You're only hurting yourself. A woman at the well. Serial monogamy is what we would call it these days, because we don't want to call people tramps anymore. So it's a serial monogamy. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. Jesus is an absolutely amazing line blurrer. So where's the opportunity for the church? Where does it continue? What's in the future? Why can I say, I don't believe in pessimism. I just don't believe in pessimism. There is hope. Well, I'll tell you something that's being talked about. Don't know if it's ever going to happen. Don't know the way it's going to happen. Spirituality is on the public agenda. And you're starting to find that some healthcare professionals, psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, occupational therapists, and others don't know how to deal with it. They're supposed to, but they don't know. They haven't been trained in how to deal with people as spiritual beings. It's how to help people develop their spirituality. And so I offered recently to go in and meet with a group of, it may happen, it may not, to go in and meet with a group of psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers, and just talk about spirituality. So what do? I'm not going to go in and say, well, Jesus loves you and he died to save you from your sins. Give your life to Christ and everything will be fine. They will look at me and go, you should be one of our clients. Rightly so. That's just not the way you do it. But what you do is you go in and you use a language that's very common in our society. You talk about mindfulness, because that's a big thing in society. Mindfulness, it's a good thing. Mindfulness is about a holistic approach. We're not just body. We're not just mind. We're not just emotions. We're not just our search. And to be aware, to be mindful of everything that we are. Spirituality comes into that. But then you know what you do? What you got to do after you talk about mindfulness? You can't just use that word, because words are empty. You got to fill that word with meaning. And so mindfulness, very naturally and comfortable as a pair of old slippers, you start talking about spirituality. You start talking about spirituality, you start getting questions. Isn't that magnificent? So where is the church? Where is the church? We're at a crossroads. There are churches that are going to say, damn it, we're going to hold on to our traditions and our old hymn books, and we are going to hold on to everything we are right up until the last person leaves. That might happen within a couple of years in some churches. It's already happened in many. There's a church looking for a minister right now. They've interviewed a whole bunch of them, Anglican churches, and no one meets their criteria. Maybe you should look at yourself. Just a little. That's one thing. I didn't intend to say that, but needed to put it in. Then you can look at the other side of things. And you can say, we are not called to be the last one out, journal, lights, lock the door. We are called to go into society and blur the lines, to bring some love where there isn't love, to bring a smile where people used to crying, to offer what we have, to put ourselves in a position with our skills and our resources and our life experience and our strengths and bloody hell, our weaknesses too. And we say, in it all, even sometimes in spite of it all, me, just like you, who hurts and who cries and who grieves and who laughs and who, well, I was going to say jumps up and down, don't do that, but who celebrates, I'm what I am because there's something that I have. And you know what? We get asked questions. The question that Jesus was asked by the blind man today after he received his healing was, Who, Jesus? Not some man? Who? Well, the one who's speaking to you, not him. My Lord. And he worshiped him. See, that's where we are, folks. The old ways haven't worked for a long time. They're not working, and they're not going to anytime soon. The possibility is there. If only we're willing to go out into our environments, whatever those environments are, with the personality that God has blessed us with the strength that God has gifted us with the weaknesses that God has permitted us to have, and all of that to say, I am who I am because of the love of God and the grace of God. If we do that, then we are doing what we are called to do. We are taking good news out into the world. So wherever you are, whatever you do, you have an opportunity this day, every day of your life, to share the love of God. Well, I can go on. That's going to take place at the vestry meeting after the service. Now let's pray. God, thank you for the opportunity for service. Thank you for all the opportunities you give us. Thank you for the fullness of our human experience. Thank you even for times of confusion and sometimes bordering on despair. Help us to know how to live in the sad times as well as the good times, and to be there for one another. Teach us to step beyond ourselves and our limitations, to truly be your people. And God, I pray for the world around us. There is no end to the need. And sometimes I fear it's just convenient to look at what's going on in the Middle East and with ISIS and all the rest of it, because while we are rightly horrified by what's happening there, it sort of means that we don't necessarily have to look at what's happening next door. So we pray for what's happening next door, or even in our own homes. Give us conviction, strength, and humility to share your love. In Jesus' name, amen.